Hi, Jim.
Hey, Heidi. How you doing today?
Good. Very well. How are you?
Real good, real good. So everyone, welcome to Global Topic Live. I'm Jim Kunkel.
And I'm Heidi Brooks. And today we are speaking about, I apologize. I had a little distraction in the background right before I went on. So I apologize, Jim. You're such a professional at these lives. But today we're talking to David Rivet, covering, which topic is it?
We're going to be talking today about coding failure investigations.
Yes. And David is the principal of Rivet Coding Consultants. So welcome, David.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Good. Nice to see you.
It's going real good. Hey, David, for the viewers, if you could do a favor, cover your background and also talk a little bit about Rivet Coding Consultants, what you guys do.
So my background, I am a NACE certified coding inspector, level 3. I believe I still have my cathodic protection, level 1. Been in the coatings industry from bridges, water, wastewater treatment plants, structural steel, marine, pretty much anything with all coatings and materials. And then 3.5 years ago, 2018, I came up with Rivet Coding Consultants, and we specialize in super yachts and their coating systems, interior and exterior coatings, and do everything from the inspections to coating specifications to failure analysis and expert witness services.
Very good. You know, for today's stream, it doesn't matter if you're doing investigative protective coatings investigations on super yachts, or if you're doing it on any type of other infrastructure or other type of product that's out there. Relatively almost the same process and procedures are followed. So, you know, David, when you have a client coming to you and they're saying, hey, we have a problem here, we need you to take a look at this, do an assessment, do an investigation for a coating failure. You know, typically, what's the first step that you do related to a project?
So whenever I get called on a failure analysis, it's usually, hey, we have a problem with our paint, quote unquote, and that's pretty much, they might give me a little bit more detail, but I try to go into it with nothing, because it could be so many different things that it's best to go in it with an unbiased kind of opinion. And what I like to do is first get eyes on it. One of the trickier things to handle is the lighting, because there's been times where things are very noticeable under certain lighting, and then they completely disappear under, other lighting. So it's putting eyes on it. It's like the first step to really figure out, what's going on, what types of issues they're having, and the extent of those issues.
Now, would that also include, a first step for you is to take a look at the project specifications, look at the products that were used, and also look at the inspection, the final inspection report? You go through that as well?
I try to when it's available. There's times where there's no specification. They know one product that was applied, but might not know the rest. And in some of the super yacht coating systems, exterior wise, I've had as high as 15 to 18 different layers of materials and different colors, different products from 20 years ago that were just casually kind of painted over. And that's okay to do with super yachts because of the product capabilities. But yeah, it definitely pushes the boundaries on what our industry is kind of used to seeing, because it's usually 1, 2, 3 code systems. So once you start seeing that many, it gets a little complicated. But Yeah, there's a lot of it's the same materials, epoxies, and it all depends on the substrates. Um, Fiberglass, aluminum, steel, they all need prepared just like they would if it was a bridge or anything else.
Tell me a little bit about the first visual assessment, the pre-forensic side. Do you have tools that you automatically bring? What do you, I think I would agree that you should be unbiased, but I'm sure you have some.
Yeah, so with this side of the industry, there's some unique equipment that is pretty much only for this industry and similar. Is a gloss meter. That's the basic name for it. It's like I can't even pronounce the technical word for it. Spectra something. It measures the gloss, the sheen, the reflected image in the paint, and it puts a number value to the quality of a small area that the gauge measures. So it's similar to DFTs where you have to kind of take them across the board and get your averages and view the standard deviation in comparison. Because with this stuff, the standard deviation will give you if you have a real low standard deviation, 0.5, meaning that means that it's very consistent all the way around. But if you start getting 10, 20, 30 gloss units of deviation, it means that some parts are flat and other parts are very shiny. So then separating out that kind of data is the fun part.
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing too, what I always found fascinating with a lot of the, let's say the pre-forensic type of assessments is the visuals that are done, obviously video as well. Now, for you, there are a lot of different technologies. Is there anything when it comes to the visual assessment and you're providing this information to the client, do you do anything differently than just say paper and photos?
Yes. So we've been experimenting with this, and I put a lot more time into it than I probably should, but I like figuring this stuff out. Instead of going the normal route of taking two-dimensional still images, putting them into a report where the images are 2 inches, you can't really make out what's in them. I went the other end and was putting high definition, extremely high definition photos into the report. But then I would end up with 1,000 to 10,000 photos. So relaying that information to the client was really challenging because I would just flood them with data that they couldn't even process. So then I went the route of using a 360-degree camera, and I will go through and physically mark the whole vessel with everything that I can find. Orange peel, paint runs, sags, corrosion, any of the non-conformance, the usual non-conformance items, and we'll mark them with a color of masking tape. And then I run the 360 camera. So in my reports, it puts the viewer reader on the boat with me. And that way they can see everything in high definition, just like if I was walking them around the boat. And
wow.
that's been really, that's been a hit so far. So it's just a matter of fine tuning it.
Now, when you say client, are you speaking, do most clients that consult with you, are they the yacht owner or are they?
It's a mixture.
It's
a really big mixture right now. The owners directly, that occurs usually for the lawsuits and litigation work, and that's a little intense. But
that sounds like it.
Yeah, and then there's also the shipyards, the vessel manufacturers, which many of them are in Europe. Most of the vessels are built in Europe, and most of them are repainted or refitted here in Florida or in the U.S. So it's a big mixture depending on the situation and how severe it is. Then there's also owners aside, the captain or yacht management or whoever is in charge of the vessel has hired me to do what's called a paint survey, and it's just a report card, for lack of better words, to assess their paint job and see where things stand. Some of the newer vessel manufacturers are utilizing me before the boat is even named, and
that.
we can get a baseline, and then we're able to track how the coating system performs based on where the vessel is located, because over in Seattle, they get more life out of their paint jobs because the sun doesn't beat it up as much as it does down here in Florida. So there's a lot of factors that play into it. It's the same complexities as a normal, coating related project, except aesthetics are very important. So it's painting a bridge like a race car, like a Ferrari or a Lamborghini.
That's a good way to put it. So, we covered here on the dealing with the assessment type, the report card you talked about. Now let's talk about going into more in-depth forensic investigation work here. I've seen a lot of incredible technologies that are brought to do these failure investigations. Could you go into some detail about what are some of the common investigative, let's say scientific studies that are done, or testing that's done, excuse me?
It's the usual pull-off adhesion testing. I do not recommend anybody using the manual one because I have personally had to use that one on a bridge, and the pneumatic one's a lot easier. You press a button and it can pull the paint. It measures how much pressure it takes to pull that area of paint apart. And then you're able to verify where the break happens, essentially where the failure would most likely occur first. And for most epoxies, it's like 600 PSI and up is an approved, acceptable result. I've had times where we're expecting, 1200 PSI and it's popped off at 190 at the primer. And then that was directly related to this wasn't a vessel, one of the yachts, but it was a normal coating project, and it was the 3-part zinc. Adding the zinc dust into the epoxy wasn't done properly, and sure enough, it caused a really low value for that test. As far as other testing goes, I utilize a field microscope camera. In the industry, they offer the field microscopes that you're able to plug into a USB and or plug it into your computer rather, like a laboratory's. It's more geared for a lab. I needed something that I could bring onto a raft and float alongside of a boat and use it right there. So I've been fortunate to find a lot of the tools, such as the 360 camera, even for documentation purposes. But we have pause detector full kits, ultrasound. The hardest thing is measuring the paint thickness on these boats because of how many layers there are. Most of the ultrasound gauges are built to do up to 3 layers and only 140, 160 mils, something like that. And there's times where there's 2 inches of body filler on the hull that I would need to read through. That's been the one tricky thing, because then that pretty much backs me into a corner of doing destructive testing. And good old using a hole saw and cutting into the side of a multi-million-dollar boat. I don't like doing those tests at all. It's painful to do and watch.
I can
Well,
imagine.
yeah, I was going to say, I remember, you were talking to me the last time we had a live stream. We did the test here on LinkedIn back about a month or so ago, and you were talking about the different layers. But then also too, you had, body filler put on, wasn't prepped properly. Layer on top of layer, and boy, I just appreciate with the level of investigative work you do, but also too, these owners have multi-million-dollar vessels, and they're having literally chunks of coating systems falling off of their vessels. So I can really appreciate that.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
for me, it's become as we were discussing earlier. So I was always passionate about the coatings side of things, and it just so happened that I've always enjoyed fat cars, trucks, motors, anything with an engine. I've always enjoyed. So I fell into the right industry. But they definitely needed it. It's just the education aspect of it's the biggest thing. The individual applicators, I feel that I can actually help the whole industry. I know that's a bold thing to say. But that's what I'm kind of aiming to do. Is I don't want to be the one to point out failures, and just pointing out failures. I'd rather, be there if that's needed, but would rather aim the industry in the right direction.
Yeah,
Essentially, working myself out of a job.
Yeah, you don't want to be the bad news. Oh, here's David. Oh boy, it's bad news.
Exactly. Exactly, and it's definitely, we're at that point, unintentionally, but at the same time, I am getting a lot of respect, which I was not necessarily surprised, but naturally, I'm the messenger of bad news. So it's been well received, or fairly well received, where there's one side of the industry that wants to learn. They really want to do better, and it's just a matter of giving them the right information to do that. Then there's the other side that they see a threat. And that's not here to ruin anybody's business or anything. And just here strictly to help and educate.
No, I think that's pretty common territory that you find yourself in with coatings. One thing that you said that I appreciate as the co-host here, the last 4 guests we've had, and we've had multiple at the same time, it seems like you mirror the same, where they want to make an impact in their industry, in the corrosion industry. And it sounds like you are. I mean, this, as I mentioned before, I owned a boat and jet ski rental company for many years, and there are a lot of issues that just when it comes to being in water, that just get covered up because there isn't someone with that education, especially a coatings education. I mean, and to have that come into when you own or manage a super yacht, because there's more money involved, is even more, makes a difference even more. So
definitely. And that's a lot of the thing that's fueling me recently anyway, is just seeing people get taken advantage of because the education isn't there. So it's just, and to me, I don't know, if you're paying for something of high quality, like you should get it. And and to just see the amount of opportunities that are involved with this stuff is just like, if you show up and do what you're supposed to, it's everyone is pleased, and it's good for the industry and all of that. But when you have greed and fear, yeah, exactly,
someone's going to do better.
It's not good for anybody. It's not good for the industry. And yachting industry as a whole, but even coatings, same thing. If they get misled by paint surveyors, which has been happening, it makes them very leery to trust anybody. So then you get small groups of people that kind of branch off, and to me, that's not a good thing for the industry. So that's what we're trying to do.
So that's a good point to make. how do you get this data from your testing back to the client?
So I have been painfully. We do a coding survey report. It'll be the regular printable report.
Mm-hmm.
And then within that report is actually web links that take you to the areas of the vessel that are experiencing issues in the 360 thing. So it's an interactive. I set it up this way so that we can still print it. You can still take it to show people. You can still, if it needs to go to court and the courtroom doesn't have Wi-Fi, you can still get through the bulk of it. If you do have Wi-Fi, you can go on the boat and you won't have to like search for everything. You'll be shown everything in the 360.
That's what it sounds like. So they're reading it, plus they can click and look and put the two together.
Yep.
Sounds very efficient.
It really shows. It's made it really hard to argue with the reports. But that's what I think the whole reporting documentation, project documentation, because I've always had a problem with it. Even doing bridges, water, wastewater, because you get handed a template that it might fit, one type of job, but then anybody that has dealt with coatings knows that nothing ever goes as planned. So there's new things that pop up, things that, weren't expected, and having a report that can adjust, expand, collapse, to me was like one of the biggest problems that the industry as a whole has had, is just documenting that kind of stuff and keeping people accountable, I guess.
Definitely.
So yeah.
So when we look at you've gone through, you do that assessment, you reviewed the documentation, both the specification, the final inspection results from the project. You're also going through and you're doing your visual assessment and things like that. You've done forensic investigation. For me, the uses of the report is going to be a couple things. I view it as a potential corrective action. The other would be a project rework. In other words, to justify that there has to be a complete rework. Correct. And then the third thing that I'd like to focus a little bit on is litigation. When it comes to the coatings industry, for example, just like other industries, the roofing industry, very heavily litigated. And a lot of times these investigative reports are going towards litigation. Could you go in a little bit of detail related to these type of reporting going into litigation? Excuse me.
Yeah, absolutely. So with the litigation, it goes back to the base principle of taking that document needs to show the extent of what's like. The more that you can prove what's going on and actually show the extent of it, because me visually seeing it, I'm very like it's burned into my head. I know where those spots are and all of that, but someone that hasn't even been on the vessel, the structure, whatever it is, relaying that message to them, because if they just look at a few examples of the failures, then there could be one of each of those, and that's not that bad. But if that's like that every square foot of this whole structure, it's very easy for a report to not reflect what's going on fully. I think that's been a big problem. In addition to the reports that like we produce and take them there, I forgot to mention that we also utilize coating laboratories that can do the crazy testing, chemical analysis, where they'll explode the sample, small sample that'll explode it in a small chamber, and they're able to use I can't remember the sensor. It identifies what chemicals are there with light somehow. This is like the whole other, it's almost magic in many ways. because if, for example, one of the situations that we came across was an issue that had been going on for a long time and no one could figure out what was going on. And there's so many different tests that can be run, but all of those like variables and factors have to be kind of like neatly packaged for the lab to even know which tests they're going to run. And someone like myself needs to be aware of what tests are possible
Are available.
Yep, because you can test for the chemical cure of it, and then the analysis can actually reflect how many solids there should be in the paint, and they do that by burning off everything else. And if there should be X amount of volume solids and you're shy of that, that can absolutely impact the performance, the warranty, everything. Now, did that come from the manufacturer, or did someone not mix the material properly? And that's where all the other variables, I wouldn't say that there's just one test that you can do to solve everything, because it all needs to be kind of packaged together, down to even the cost of what the paint job, what they paid for the paint job. Because again, if this is for all industries, when it comes to coatings, people think you can rush it, you can, accelerate things, and all it does is it sets them up for failure.
For sure.
The coatings are way more sensitive than I think a lot of people are, that a lot of people are aware of. And 5 degrees air temperature difference can throw off an entire paint project. So yeah, the different testing that's available, though, it's really interesting. Most people don't get to explore that kind of stuff. So to see, it's even one of the comments, gas chromatography. That's like one of the go-to tests, and even down to like the color matching is a whole nother situation when it comes to coatings, because it's with the boats especially, they're using metallics. So then with metallic, it's metal flake that has to lay, it's suspended in a fluid basically, and it has to lay a certain way consistently, for 100 feet long, 200 feet, and to have an individual human keep his distance from the boat the same, keep the air pressure the same. They can't stop, slow down, nothing. It has to, that's how consistent it has to be for metallics to be applied properly. It's not to say that they are not applied properly if there is some variation, but when you expect a car finish, on a structure, it has to be consistent throughout. So there's a lot of variables that go into all of it.
Yeah. David, I had sent you, I think I texted you about these new composites and materials and coating systems that are futuristic, obviously, that are going to probably be coming to super yachts. A LinkedIn user asked regarding, the different types of coatings, obviously, are there alternatives that are going to be coming to the industry that you see of?
Yeah. And I mean, it's always an ongoing thing, especially with all the, not just the yachts, but all coatings. We learned that some materials aren't as safe as we once thought they were, and it's unfortunate, but it's, we don't know until proper testing and everything is done. Like with silica, for instance, abrasive blasting, everyone in the yachting industry refers to it as sandblasting. Everybody, even if they're not using sand. And I'm doing the best that I can to help guide people. Like, hey, because I did have a gentleman that wanted to use silica sand for sandblasting, and it's educating them as these things come up. There's also the weird, unique situations where California doesn't let certain coatings be applied to the boats, but the boats travel the globe. So, yeah, copper-based anti-foulings are not approved in California, but approved other places. Then there's other countries where they may not have any rules or regulations to what coatings get applied. So it's one of those, you kind of have to be prepared for any coating. Open it delicately because there might be lead or, other dangerous, hazardous materials that were used. There's a big trend with ceramic coatings, which I'm a fan of. I definitely support the idea of them. The thing that's being left out of the whole discussion is that the coating manufacturers aren't the ones producing them. It's these smaller companies that are like, we have this, it's a ceramic coating. It's a clear coat. In a nutshell, it's another material that's like paint that gets applied over their paint system. So now the warranty for that paint system gets affected because you're mixing manufacturers, and if something happens to the paint system because of that product, then who's at fault?
Yeah.
And that's where it gets pretty, the waters get muddied when it comes to that. I fully support the idea of it because currently UV is the biggest killer of these paint jobs. You'll have a vessel that's maybe 5 years old that it's flat.
Yeah.
5-6 years, there's no gloss left, and that's even if they're maintaining it. It all depends on how much sun it gets, and they're designed to be in the sun. Yeah. So it's a back and forth thing for sure.
Where do you see everyone getting their education from? Is it the paint suppliers, or I could see where where the human error would come in, but I don't want to make an assumption.
So it's a mixture of people that have been painting boats their whole life, and trial and error.
Yeah.
Which by all means, that's an excellent. There are some guys that aren't certified or educated in anything, but have a ton of knowledge, a ton. And I've seen some really, really neat, just techniques, methods, different ways of doing things that, maybe all the other paint contractors aren't doing. And whenever I see that kind of stuff, like, that gets me excited because that's someone doing something outside the normal. It could go bad, but you don't know until you try to make a difference or a change in something.
Yeah. So, it's almost like, it's great to have the industrial painter, but they also have to be able to do, car detail painting.
It's a whole nother, to me, the super yacht paint contractors and the actual guys that spray the finish, that should be, in my opinion, like the apex tier for a painter. Bridge painters or anybody, like, if they would like this anyway, that should be like where they see themselves, like top of the food chain, kind of, in regards to the painting career, because it's a skill that not many people can do. Now, it's one thing to apply materials just quickly, runs don't rust is my favorite, excuse whenever I find them. But like, it should be treated as such, like a respected, it shouldn't be just hand anybody this spray gun to do this.
Right.
His hands should be, protected or something. Something along those lines, I think, would just be a good attitude change, for the whole industry, to treat it as such, because these are the most expensive structures, assets that I've ever been, ever seen up close. And, you should have the best of the best doing the work, in my opinion. But
Well, kind of like the pipeline industry with the applicators, it's really important. I mean, it's as you mentioned, much bigger industry, we all know, than the super yacht industry, but that training is so important, and that certification is really important, because you don't want to just give anyone a gun, a spray gun, and not a regular gun, a spray gun.
Right.
But I could only imagine for these super yachts, that would be even more.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
And I just think in general, you want people that care about what they're doing, like taking a sense of pride in their work. And it's very, very prevalent in the yachting industry. It's just the companies themselves are very proud. And what I kind of envision or hope for anyway is the individual guys having that same, pride throughout the industry and throughout, the coatings industry as a whole. There should be like the all-star applicators that people want to be like. And, I've met some guys, and they might act like divas. They'll sit in their truck until it's time for them to perform. But it's it's the future of these industries. That's what's going to motivate the younger generation. They're not, the younger generations aren't geared the same, I guess, as the older generation. So it's like, if you kind of think about it that way, that would definitely fuel, a new generation of applicators.
Well, I think you're bringing awareness, and I think confidence in applicators is very important, and education gives them that confidence. So I think what you provide, you can really see it in your conversation, the passion you have and the education that you could provide for a client or for someone you're consulting.
Absolutely. And more importantly, I think, as an inspector, and this is for all industries, the inspector should know what it takes, before you make judgment or have anybody do any more work than they're supposed to. Like, is it absolutely necessary? Is it achievable for the situation? And that's something that, like, I try to fit into every project where I can. But take that into account before, because there are a ton of guys that work extremely hard. And it's like, if they were given just a little bit more knowledge, even guidance, like, they would understand why they're doing what they're doing, and it would just naturally progress into a better situation for everybody. And that's just my opinion on it anyway.
That's a good one.
Yeah, very good.
Appreciate it.
David, I really, Heidi and I, we really appreciate having this opportunity to have this conversation with you you today. And we look forward to talking with you again on Global Topic Live. Yeah.
It's been a pleasure to be here.
You have fun at the boat show.
Yeah. I'm definitely, I haven't been to the Palm Beach one yet. I've gone to the Fort Lauderdale boat show.
That's the biggest one, right? The Fort Lauderdale one? Yeah.
Correct.
We had someone checking in on here from Fort Lauderdale, I think.
Yeah, yes. Latitude 26.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's a big industry that there's so much potential that I'm excited. I'm more excited about the potential that the industry has, because I want to do some really cool stuff, like gold plating, maybe. Ooh. Gold plating someone's boat and playing with big metals and dissimilar metals and stuff like that. That's the kind of stuff that I enjoy. But I can't complain. Sitting on a inspection raft going around a boat, 20, 40, $100 million yacht
I
in
was
South
just
Florida.
I was just going to say I'm a pretty good applicator. I work in the coatings industry on 4 different pipeline integrity products. And if you need an extra applicator one time for a week, I could help.
Yeah, for sure.
And David, you never know. There could be a prince or a mega wealthy person right now watching this and saying, I'm going to contact David Rivet so we can do that gold-plated ship.
Yeah, this will be up on YouTube after. So
awesome. Let's do it.
All right, David. Well, thank you very much. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Bye, David.
Okay, Heidi. So that ends today's stream. And Tuesday, we'll be back again. We're going to be an hour earlier at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And our guests will be Jack Walker, Paula James from the Carbon Line Tech Services podcast.
I'm looking forward to that.
Heidi, have a great day.
You too. Bye, Jim.
Bye, everybody.